Hi, good morning. How you doing? We're back with another SUP FM podcast, and this time we're interviewing Evelyn O'Doherty all the way from New York, and it's really cool to chat to her about Standup Journal, which has been her baby for quite a few years now. And she, well, you know, you can hear the story, how she started it. It's quite fun. And Evelyn is really good fun. I really enjoyed chatting to her, and there's so much. I mean, obviously she's that's one of the biggest brands online and in print about stand-up paddle, so most people get their news from there, and it's really interesting to hear the backstory.
Aloha and welcome to SUP FM, the podcast for stand-up paddleboarders everywhere. So with no further ado, let's get out on the water and on with the show. Here are your hosts, Nick and Simon.
Hi Evelyn, thanks so much for joining us on the SUP FM podcast.
Nick, it is awesome to be here today. We've talked about getting together to chat for quite a while now, and I just think this is perfect timing, and I'm super excited to share what's up and coming and just chat with you a bit about the state of stand-up paddling, man. Like it's all looking good from this perspective.
Yeah, it's going pretty crazy, and it's awesome to chat to you as well, because a long time ago, about like 5 years ago, we interviewed Adam Champagne, and I'm not even sure, is he still with the Journal?
Alas, I can't believe you just mentioned Adam's name. No, Adam is no longer with the Journal, and it is still a devastating loss. I mean, he literally taught me everything I know about the magazine before I took over. He is the backbone of why we were successful in that transfer. And he left to build his own media company. And I can't say enough about the guy. If anybody has an opportunity to work with Adam, they should. He's a brilliant technician, you know, behind the scenes on web development. And he's also just a stand-up character. What a great guy.
Excellent. Yeah, he was a great guy to chat to all those years ago. But over to you. So now with a surname like O'Doherty, hopefully I pronounced that right.
You did.
Can you trace your Irish ancestry, or have you?
I haven't. I'm so called out on that. I haven't actually traced it yet, although it is something that I plan to do, in all my spare time. Haha. But I have, I know my family originates in Dublin, and my grandmother's maiden name was Kelly. And quite honestly, that sort of is where I get overwhelmed at the thought of tracing my Irish heritage, because once you land on a Mary Kelly, which is my grandmother's name, it just gets really abundant, so there's a lot of sifting to be done. So I haven't traced it yet, but it is it's definitely on my radar.
Because I looked up the O'Doherty clan just before doing a little bit of research for this podcast, and then I found this place called Carrick-a-Braggy Castle right in the north of Ireland, and it looks amazing. It's right on the ocean. Looks like an amazing place to paddle around.
I just love the name of it, the Carrick-a-Braggy Castle of the O'Doherty clan. Like, hell yes, I need to go visit that.
Sounds like you have to, yeah. So can you recall the beginnings of your SUP journey way back in 2007? I mean, let's talk about your first SUP race. What was it like on the start line?
Oh, Nick. So there's a lot of good stories there, but my first SUP race ever was the Rincon Beach Boy, probably around 2007, 2008. I'd have to look up the dates. And it was sort of a wonderful time for me, because I had friends actually sponsored me, like got together and decided they wanted me to run in this race, to paddle in this race. And they bought my plane ticket, and they registered me for the race, and they sent me down to Puerto Rico to participate in my first stand-up paddle race. And I've been going back and forth to Puerto Rico for years, so it was just a pure joy to be able to do it. And I went, that was my first trip I've ever taken, I think, completely solo, just, in terms of stand-up paddle racing. And,
wow.
And I got down there in the middle of the night, the flights get in at like 3:00 in the morning, and I had my rental car and I had nowhere to go because the place I was renting wasn't open yet. So I wound up like sleeping in a church parking lot and, waking up and figuring it all out. But what happened in that race was I was on the start line. I was absolutely terrified, but the fact that I was I was not known in any way, shape, or form, like gave me this incredible freedom. Like I was just so excited to participate, to be a part of this. And also the Rincon Beach Boy also benefits a really beautiful cause. And I was just really just proud that my friends had sent me and that I got to participate in this cause and be a part of this incredible experience, which I'd never been on before. And it's an 8 mile open ocean race. And anybody who knows me knows that like just open ocean is completely my jam. I'm so just in love with it. And I completed the race and I thought it was amazing. And I went back to my hotel room, right? I was like, oh, that was great. I'm going to go home and change for the party. And I had a couple of people I knew were there, and somebody called me and was like, Evelyn, where are you? I'm like, oh, I'm at the hotel. And he's like, they're calling your name. Like you're supposed to be up on the podium, like, and there's money, like they like you won something, and I literally had no clue. I had no clue even what that meant. And I just went running back down there, and it was too late. I'd missed my epic podium moment, but I'd come in fourth in my division, and they handed me a check for like $125. And I've never been more excited about anything in my entire life. And right from that moment, I've been completely hooked, like there's just no going back after just a complete, mind blowing experience like that.
Wow, what a start. I mean, obviously you must have been paddling before that, right? So when did you first step on a board?
Yeah, I'd been paddling for a few years before that. So the first time I stepped on a board, I was injured. I had a neck, like a nerve in my neck was really firing due to a bone spur I had in my neck, and I wasn't able to surf. And surfing is sort of it's like my everything. It's like where I get my joy and my exercise. And I was so miserable. It was a whole summer. It just wouldn't get better. And I was so miserable sitting on the beach, not being able to do what I wanted, that a friend of mine finally took pity on me and was like, you need to try stand-up paddleboarding. And at first I thought, I said to him, I'm like, oh no, like I'm a surfer, I'm a purist. You'll never get me on one of those things. And, but I was miserable enough that I did. And he was amazing. He took me out on a couple of great paddles. The first one was on Georgica Pond here in East Hampton, New York, which is some of the most prime time real estate, maybe in the world. Like it's just a very beautiful body of water, surrounded by just magnificent homes, some of which are castles, and you can paddle across the pond and go into the ocean, which we did. And I mean, he just blew my mind with the whole experience. And it also allowed me a way to get on the water and get my fix, get my connection to the water back without exacerbating my neck. And the interesting part of it was, as with anything I love, like once I take to it, it's, I'm all in. I'm doing it, 3 times a day for 2 hours at a clip. And I became so strong from paddling. Specifically, my core became so just strengthened from all the paddling I was doing, that it actually shifted my posture a little bit, like lifted my posture, and it released the nerve in my neck. And it's sort of a miracle cure. And to this day, I've never had that issue again. Like I had 3 surgeons telling me they needed to, cut me and put in plates and all this stuff. And instead I started paddleboarding, and this is a true story. It's never bothered me since.
Wow. The best medicine ever.
Ever. Yeah.
But now, so when did stand-up paddle come to New York? Because I mean, that must have been about 2005. And I've been chatting to some guys in California, and they were saying that it kind of started about 2006, 2007, but it was been around in Hawaii for a long time before that, right?
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. So the New York SUP scene, we were maybe at first around 2 or 3 years behind California in terms of its growth and popularity. So we were paddling here in 2008, but it wasn't nearly as dominant as it is today. And so as a paddler, I was one of like stoked crew, like a small crew of people. And that has grown. We don't have the benefit of warm water, 12 months a year here. So it's a sort of a select crew that continues to paddle after Labor Day, which is, the beginning of September for us. And that crew is even smaller for people who want to paddle year round, right? Like really push the envelope and get out there in January and February and March, which, it's just flipping cold, So what's great about the New York crew is we're tight, everybody knows everybody. Everybody is there. There's healthy competition and there's healthy sort of razzing, but in the end, like I've never been to an event where anybody is anything but completely enthusiastic, and passionate to see each other. And we leave the competition on the water.
Is there like an organization? I mean, do you guys have a Facebook group and stuff and you all get together and paddle together, or is it just...
Well, one of the things that I really wish for, Nick, is that we had an overriding body here in the Northeast, some sort of just something like that, a group, because we do have a Facebook group, but there's like everybody has a Facebook group, like I started one for paddling here in the Hamptons on the eastern tip of Long Island. And that was the only one for a long time. And then other groups have popped up, and now there's Facebook groups for like paddling in Connecticut and paddling up the island towards New York City and paddling, all over. And it's sort of, the unity of it all has splintered as everybody's like sort of hyper focused on their own locale, which is disappointing. If we talked more about paddling in other places, I feel like we could continue to grow this sport, and experience, just that energy that happens when somebody says like, what are all you guys doing? And how do I get a chance to do that? And, because part of what is so beneficial about stand-up paddling is the camaraderie, right? Is the energy of the social group and the athletes coming together. So we have a good New York scene. I know you mentioned something about the races, and here we have the big one that I love the most is called Sea Paddle New York City. So it's SEA Paddle NYC, and that's literally, it's a 24-mile circumnavigation around the island of Manhattan, and that goes every year, not this year due to COVID. But Sea Paddle New York City is a big race. It draws a lot of big talent. We've had Kai Lenny and Chase Kosterlitz and Seychelles, and a lot of different individuals come for that.
Is it the same race that's been transformed into the APP World Tour or not?
No. So, right. So the Sea Paddle New York City has been around for a lot longer. I think it's in its 12th year or something like that, in terms of doing this one race around Manhattan. And I know the APP World Tour did contact Sea Paddle to see if they could come together in that, and it just the logistics of it, because Sea Paddle is at its heart, it's a fundraiser, and they weren't willing to give that up, because there are causes that depend on it. So the APP World Tour created its own course when it was here for the last couple of seasons, and that course was different from the one in the Sea Paddle New York City, but they both involve paddling on the Hudson, which is amazing.
Gotcha. And obviously there must be lots of little paddles and local races and get-togethers and stuff all around the Hamptons and Long Island, I suppose.
There are. And then, again, it's something that, we need to just sort of monitor the growth of this sport, because there used to be like a set series of like 4 races that everybody went to. And then, and that included out here, the big one was the Hamptons Paddle for the Pink, which I don't think that's still in the sort of manifestation stage, but what it was, that one was hilarious because it tapped into all the sort of the hedge fund and the celebrities and, the people that make the Hamptons this, sort of high-end resort experience. And those people would be on the water, and most of them, can't paddle for worth a dime, but it was great to have them. And what they would do is donate to the cause. And that was amazing, right? So that was a beautiful event that had just a lot of different fun elements to it. And then I have a great friend who owns a shop in Babylon who puts on a race every year called Race for the Great South Bay. And that also has maybe, over 100 people every year and growing, on the Great South Bay there in, is that Nassau County? It might be Nassau County. Anyway, so there are plenty of races around, but what I find too is now everybody's popping up and creating their own event, and that it just diminishes, the impact of all the events when people are now forced to choose between X and Y on a particular weekend.
I mean, there is that, obviously, but like, for example, on the flip side of the coin, down here in the Algarve in Portugal, we have no local races. I think there's one every year where the Portugal SUP series comes down and they do a race here. But there's no sort of small local races at all, and there's hardly anybody interacting. So I'm trying to grow this up and get a whole bunch of guys together to start doing little paddles, just try and grow it. Because when you mentioned Chase Kostelitz earlier, we interviewed him a while back, 5 years ago, and he was saying the best way to promote things is to start little races and do it. But I suppose you guys have got the flip side of the coin there. If there's too many races in New York.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to sound in any way, negative about it, because it is wonderful that so many people are so excited that they want to put on their own event. I just have the suggestion, that we check with each other on, there's only 8 weekends or, whatever it is, 8 weekends during the course of a New York summer. So let's spread them out. That's all.
Yeah, coordinate, I guess.
Yeah, nobody has a race in the beginning of July, but they're all packed into the first couple of weeks of August. And it's a problem. It's just there's too much happening. And if we could just all agree to support each other by, I'll come to yours if you come to mine. And, and that kind of communication, I think it would just help develop the growth of the sport as a whole.
And also something interesting to note, I think, for everyone out there, is that people are not shy of getting up at 6 a.m. in the middle of a winter's morning. Like, look at Paris, for example. It's the biggest event in the world. I think there's about 1,000 people paddling there. And that is freezing cold.
It's freezing, yeah.
And then there's the Gla race as well in where's it? Austria or something as well. So all these super cold races, people get out and do it. It's crazy. I mean, it's so people can do it out of summer. Out of season.
Paddlers are, water people, not just paddlers, are passionate people, right? And given the opportunity to do something as a group, even if it's a little bit extreme, I think opens the gateway, for people paddling in, places like Paris and the Gla race and, and anywhere really. I was at the Paris race 2 years ago with the APP World Tour, and I was stunned by how many people were down on that, patio getting ready to enter into the water. I couldn't believe it. It was 4:45 in the morning, and the place was just packed with crazy Parisians. It was amazing. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, but let's get to the stand-up journal, because that's obviously the major feature of this episode. And we realized that you were working for Clay Feater at the Stand-Up Journal when you took over. So how did that whole story start? Did he come to you one day and say, "Oh, that's it, I had enough. Do you want to do it, Evelyn?" Or how did that play out?
Well, it was never my intention to become a magazine publisher, right? That's how the best things in life happen. But when I started working for Clay in 2016, I was hired as the online editor. And that's where I met Adam Champagne and just have so much respect for him. And I quickly became so involved in the magazine. I was doing the online editorship, but then I was also making suggestions about what might work better for the print magazine. And then I was having conversations with, advertisers. So I was beginning to develop that side of things, like bringing in advertisers to the magazine. So I kind of became this larger entity than my role had originally hired me to be. And so it was almost like a natural progression. And one day, Clay, just let me know that, Stand-Up Journal was for sale and would I be interested? And my first reaction was like, oh no, like that's not for me, I like my job, like I like what I'm doing. And but he was serious about selling it, and I realized that it could go to somebody else. And if it went to somebody else, then all these things that I get to do, would be at risk. Like somebody else might just cut me loose and say, "I'm sorry, we're bringing in a whole new team." And anyway, so this is sort of a wonderful story. I was down in Puerto Rico with a good friend of mine, Russ Scully, and it was the surf had gone to crap, and we were just sort of floating around on our boards. And I was telling him this opportunity, like I was stuck, I didn't know what to do. And as I told him about the magazine becoming available, like Russ's eyes began to shine and light up, and he was like, He's like, Ev, not for anything, but like you are magic for this job. Like he goes, it is you. It's everything. He goes, so if you want to do it, he goes, I want to do it with you. And that was it. I was like, if I have a team like my friend Russ and, other folks, like I'm in, I'm just going to take the leap. And so we did. We went back to Clay and we made an offer, which was, and that took some negotiating. And then eventually we came to an agreement, and, my team took over in October of 2018. So it's been 2 full years now.
Okay. And that must have been quite an interesting transformation, or was it just smooth as butter?
No, it was bumpy. It was bumpy. I mean, because ultimately, my experience in publishing is I was an 8th grade English teacher, right? I worked in the public schools out here for many, many years. And I knew what I knew from my experience working with Clay. And at first, Clay wanted to be a part of the new journal, and he wanted to sort of mentor me into this new role. And then on the other side, I had Russ and my team with Jeff Henderson. And those guys have a lot of media background. They have some publishing background. They have graphic design. They're just highly skilled guys in their field, and they were chomping at the bit to really create something new, like to build something new. And so I was sort of stuck in the middle. Like here's Clay and the foundation and the tradition and everything he's built, and here's these 2 rabid watermen who are just can't wait to get, going on this new entity. And so in the end, I thanked Clay, for all his years of wisdom. And we just decided that we would step out on our own. And we figured it out. You know what I mean? Like it was a little bumpy sometimes, but ultimately it wasn't rocket science, and we were able to just find our way into what we needed to do, and get in touch with the photographers, and we began to build something that we call Stand-Up Journal 2.0, because it's pretty different from the original.
Yeah, and it just from an outside perspective, I mean, I don't have the ability to lay my hands on one of your awesome magazines itself, but I've seen it online, and it's just grow. It's been amazing. So, just for a bit of perspective, how big is Stand-Up Journal? Like, how many readers, how many people work there, etc., and where do you distribute?
So that's the running joke is, everybody thinks I live in Maui, and I'm here in New York. I guess I'm in New York. My team, so there's 4 of us that are full-time members of the staff at Stand-Up Journal. It's myself here in New York. Russ Scully is my associate publisher. Jeffrey Henderson is our creative director. Both of those gentlemen live in Burlington, Vermont. And then our subscription manager, Adina Bowdry, lives in Hampton, New Hampshire. So the 4 of us are in the Northeast here in the United States. And then we have a ton of contributors, right? So we run the bulk and the mass of the journal, but we have outside writers and photographers and, just a ton of stuff going on that we funnel into the print, what you see is the print magazine and the online blog. So the magazine itself, we have a North American distribution at the moment, and I'll get into that in a second. So we are on newsstands in the United States and Canada, and that distribution is 11,000 issues quarterly. And beyond that, we also have a growing global subscription base, right? So you can subscribe to the magazine from all over the world, and we'll ship it to you. And that subscriber base has grown by 300% 100% since we took over. So it's, people like having the magazine delivered right into their front door and having the experience personalized to them. But it's really, I think our subscriber base is like the most stoked crew on the planet. Like, it's just amazing how loyal people are. And part of that is the product that we supply is not just any magazine. It's a coffee table edition, right? It's a perfect bound, image rich, dripping with, energy and stoke magazine that you collect, that you save and you savor, long after, the time of that newsstand life. And one of the things we're very excited about is starting in spring 2021, Stand-Up Journal for the first time is finally going to start a newsstand distribution in the UK. And big yay. And why?
Does that mean Europe too, I suppose?
I'm going to look into that. I mean, actually, that's a good question.
Well, I guess, Europe forms part of the global distribution, doesn't it? Because, there's so few English speakers in Europe. I don't know if it would make sense. But anyway, sorry, that's your business.
No, I'm with you 100% on that. I have to go back to my newsstand consultant. So find out, and we will, when we get closer to spring 2021, to find out exactly where those magazines will be distributed. But I would hope it would be, in a couple of different countries. And
because there are pockets of expats, English expats all the way around Europe. And it's,
of course,
it'd be great to have the central cafe carrying your magazine. It'd be amazing.
Yeah, I know. And then, hopefully that will just grow. So that's the game plan. I would love to get it distributed in Australia and New Zealand as well. So we have a global perspective, and we're just going to work our way towards it. We're literally just on a daily basis, just trying to move the button, a little further to see where the magazine.
But I love the fact that you commented on how it's like a coffee table magazine, because the internet has really decimated so many print publications. But personally, I've always held the belief that great quality physical magazines will diminish radically, but never completely disappear if they're good enough. So I guess it's kind of like, retro records or vinyl or special, luxurious to read a good quality coffee table magazine. So how would you describe how you held up against the digital onslaught? Because it must have been really hard at times for you to think digital, or did that not really play a role in?
Oh, for sure. Oh, Nick, for sure. It, we've definitely been affected by the digital revolution. But, the team and I we're so in agreement about how the power of print, the actual, experience of holding a magazine in your hands and opening up the photos and those glorious 2-page spreads that just fall off the paper pretty much. It's a very different visceral experience than what you see on your computer screen, which you either swipe or you click away, like it's there and then it's gone again, and I just personally feel that print publications are read more consciously than like an online article where you just sort of skim and you look for the information that you're looking for. People who are committed to print really are a part of the experience with us. And one of the things that digital cannot do is, when you open up Stand-Up Journal and we have multiple, 2-page spreads and these, just big fat photographs all through the magazine that jump off the page. When the experience for me is like you open that up and you call your buddy over and you say, hey man, like, look at this. And then the two of you are, hunched over the magazine, looking at it, having that interaction, having that stoke fest. And that does not happen in the digital world.
And you can read it outdoors too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. You can read it outdoors. And I have a good friend who gave us the best compliment the other day. She works in Manhattan in an office, and she just said, your magazine gives me the ability to be on the water when I can't physically get there. And I was like, yep, that's why we're doing what we're doing. That's it.
That's wonderful. That's lovely. But I love the fact that Stand-Up Journal seems to be about everyone who paddles, not just the elite. There's so many corners of the internet dedicated to racing, and that's what it's all about. But here at SUP FM, we've tried to focus our podcast on the 70% of paddlers who just enjoy a leisurely trip out, and we're trying to inspire them to do more. So do you share that mission?
100%. Yes, absolutely. It's very easy to fall into the trap of being a competitive sports magazine, which stand-up paddling as a sport just simply, we have that. We're blessed, right, with those top tier athletes, Connor Baxter and Daniel Hughes and others like that. But the that's not the full tribe. That's not the full scope of the recreational stand-up paddleboarder. And I am hyper vigilant to creating what we call like evergreen content, or content that appeals to the everyday water man, the everyday water woman. So we're not just looking at competitive sports. We're not looking at high end sports. Like, I love the wing foil and all of that. And we definitely cover and want to celebrate these new innovations in the progress of water sports. But that what we really want to stay grounded in is the everyday paddler, and offering content on travel tips and gear. And we're working on our winter issue right now, and we're going to talk about, like, what do you need to keep paddling in colder and colder temps? Like, what is the gear that people are using, and how do you keep yourself safe in an experience like cold water paddling?
That's brilliant. Well, someone once said, I think it was Ranulph Fiennes, actually, who was a big explorer in the United Kingdom. He said, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad gear.
I love that. That's one of my favorite expressions. I can't believe you said that.
I love it too.
Yeah, it's all about
great.
the gear. And if you're a rabid paddler, which almost all of us are, you get interested in the gear, and once you're interested in the gear, you find out you can do anything. Now there's dry suits and SUP suits and wetsuit booties. Like, you can just go. We can do it. Maybe the paddles are shorter. Maybe you don't go as far offshore. But I've been out there in the middle of winter here in East Hampton, New York, with ice floes going by, and felt just such freedom and such energy and joy, from that experience, from being out on the water in a time when most people wouldn't dare to step offshore.
Yeah, and you feel so special because everyone else is sitting inside watching television and you're outside enjoying the elements. So I think
breathing.
That's an amazing thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's another thing which I love about the magazines, that you've got a section on the environment. So was that always there, or did you bring that in?
I'm responsible for bringing that in. When I first started working for the magazine under Clay, one of the first things I did was I created a category online and started deliberately soliciting content about the environment. And one of the reasons for that is I feel that any water sportsman or sportswoman, we are naturally inclined to be passionate about the environment, because that's our playground, right? That's where we go to get our fix, so to speak, and to be a part of that immersive experience in nature. So why not tap into that energy and just celebrate that as a way to get more people educated about what's happening in the environment. And we've been explosively popular in that direction. It's just been amazing, and it also gives us a chance to celebrate all the wonderful fundraisers that are happening as a result of stand-up paddling that are in support of reclaiming the environment or preserving the environment. And again, it's just about educating, just raising people's awareness a little bit at a time. My experience is if I can get you down to the water with me, right? That's the whole game. Like, get you down in the water with me, get you on a board, like show you things from that perspective, right? My perspective of being on the water and looking at the world from there. Chances are you're going to feel that, right? You're going to feel that. And my hope is you're going to fall in love with it, because once you do, now you're inclined to protect it.
Absolutely, yeah, that's so true, and it's been true for me personally as well. I mean, the more I paddle over the last 10 years, the more the more I care for the environment, the more I want to protect it and care for it. And it's shocking to see some of the stuff. Luckily, here in Portugal, is not so bad, but I mean, I've seen some pretty gnarly places with plastic piled up, and it's not great to see that. And it's fascinating to see some individuals around there. And we interviewed a guy called the SUP garbage man down in Washington,
Yep.
It was great. It was wonderful to see him going out there, taking it on himself to clean up everyone else's garbage and just shine a light for everyone else. So there's so many initiatives out there, which is great.
It's really exciting. Yeah, paddlers are exciting people and very much movers and shakers with regard to the environment. It's just a wonderful part of the entirety to be, that we get to experience here.
Okay, Evelyn, you're a super experienced paddler. What's your top tip for paddling safety?
I don't know if I'm super experienced, but I am. I mean, I'm definitely out there in every imaginable condition. So my top tip is easy. It's just don't paddle further offshore than you're capable of swimming back. And that distance changes according to conditions, right? So just don't paddle further out than you can swim back in any weather. So that's my number one, right? Like, don't depend on your board or your PFD at all. Like, it's you putting yourself out there. Make sure you can get back.
Have you ever had to swim back?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. So I'm a SUP surfer as well as a flat water paddler and racer, and I've lost my boards in all sorts of crazy conditions, and it can be eye-opening how quickly that happens. So it's just that ability to read water and understand your limits, and know how to get yourself to safety. Because I'm also a big proponent if I'm out there, I don't want to put somebody else at risk who has to come save me. Like, if I put myself out there, I need to be responsible for getting myself in. And so I take that stuff pretty seriously.
We've been quite alarmed after lockdown, seeing how many new paddlers have come on board and come out in the water, which is wonderful, because it shows that the industry is growing and stand-up paddle is growing as a sport. But a lot of people have no clue about the conditions and the environment. Does that concern you?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We have the same thing here in the States, that lockdown brought a lot of people to stand-up paddling, which is wonderful, but not a lot of those people actually even knew that there was a PFD law. Our Coast Guard, it's a requirement. You have to have one. And some people, a lot of people didn't even know. And others knew and deliberately didn't care, which is a big concern, So, a lot of that stuff, we're lucky where I live. We have a Marine Patrol that will just write you up a ticket, and it's a $200 ticket, if you don't have a PFD. So, but at the same time, just constantly alerting paddlers to the importance, of self-safety is paramount.
Yeah, and leashes. I mean, I don't understand why people have a resistance. Some people have a resistance to putting on their leash, and I'm like, it's so easy. Just stick it on. Make it a habit every single time.
You don't even know it's there. Exactly.
Yeah. So there's another interesting question, because you see there's the leash police on Facebook and on Instagram, and like every time there's, I don't know, it's quite interesting, because there's some massive photo shoots in the Times or whatever, these big publications, newspapers, who don't know anything about stand-up paddle, and they got this gorgeous model on the front and no leash or PFD in sight. So do you actually screen photos for leashes and PFDs that appear in your magazine or not?
So that's a wonderful question, and it's we sort of caught out there by this one. So we do the best we can to, always have that awareness. And at the same time, because we are often just, we're using photographs of surfers and wing foilers and, people who the leash requirement isn't necessary for, like it does slip under the radar sometimes. But when I post online, I've definitely been called out by the Facebook police 1,000 times, and I do, I guess I can say I do the best I can. It's just, it's a tough one. You know what I mean? It's a tough one, because there's an aesthetic about, a beautiful person on a board who doesn't have that PFD strapped around her waist, right? Or do you go with this other photo over here? So, there's a little bit of flow in that. Personally, I do the best I can to always be talking about safety with, my clients and my staff and my team. The magazine itself, we do, again, we're playing a fine line there of sort of aesthetic versus precaution. So, yeah. We're as guilty as anybody else, I think. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, we mentioned this before, that the vast majority of people are leisure paddlers. So what is a leisure paddler exactly?
For me, I think it's, when I go down to the water at sunset here in East Hampton, there are families who come down and they bring their boards, and it's just part of their beach experience. They just like to sort of push the board off the beach, and they tool around maybe with the kid on the front or the dog on the board, and they don't go very far, right? They just sort of stay within a certain radius of their towel and blanket, and so that's like the first level of a recreational paddler, and then there are people who get a little bit more experienced, a little bit more spunky about it, who like to push off and go on some kind of an excursion, whether that's a couple of miles or up and down the coast or what have you. They do an out and back, right? They're able to just paddle a distance and then come back to where they started, and it's more of a fitness routine. Just a little bit more of that is mixed in there, and then people, as they move into intermediate paddling, maybe begin to experience things like downwinders or getting out on the ocean or doing like deliberate longer paddle excursions, 4 miles, 5 miles, because of the beauty and the energy that brings. I mean, that's we're definitely into more of a fitness oriented individual. But let's say they're not even racing. They just love the experience of going on a longer journey. And those people, I almost feel like, between the people who do like 2 to 3 miles and the 4 to 5 milers, like that's the bulk of stand-up paddling today, right? Most people have been on boards long enough that they're able to sort of have a greater experience, a more challenging experience. And been great to see that growth, to witness that happen.
Yeah, I love the way you lay that out. That's brilliant. And then I think the next level would be people going, because I wrote an article for you on micro adventures, which is quite an interesting term. Yeah. Do you see many people doing one night or multi-day SUP trips? Do you think that's true in the USA? I know it's massive here in Europe. Everyone's doing these long trips and things.
I think it's bigger in Europe than it is here in the United States. And I don't know why, because I think there's so many incredible places for people to paddle here. I also know like Canada they do week-long excursions, and I have several of our writers and photographers up there are always sending us incredible images, of those types of stories. And I don't know, Nick, maybe it's up to me. Like maybe I'll start doing that.
Yeah, start a trend, go for it.
Why not? And bring people with me. I mean, I love the Northeast so much. Like I love where I lived so much that it would be pure heaven to do. I could do an island chain crossing from here, right? The tip of Long Island to Rhode Island to Cape Cod. Like it's all possible. So yeah, maybe I'll just call up my buddy Norm Hahn up there in Canada and see if he wants to do like a multi-island chain crossing and just have fun with it and invite people to come for one leg or 2 legs or all of it. Not a bad idea.
I remember quite some time back, there were 2 girls, I think they worked for Manhattan Kayak.
Yes.
And they paddled all the way down the East Coast, all the way down to Florida, or all the way up. I can't remember which, but that was an amazing trip to follow.
Yeah, that was Luann Harris and Jules Gismondi, and the 2 of them are legends. To all of us here in New York, they did that, and then recently Luann did the I don't want to get it wrong, the Mississippi River. Is that right?
Be, yeah.
Anyway, she did it all by herself. So wow. She is somebody who's continued along that vein.
Who was that? Jules?
No, it wasn't Jules. It was Luann.
Okay.
Yeah. But she did it. She was out there for 4.5 months by herself. Wow. It was incredible.
I just did a trip and it took us 4 days. I don't know if I could handle 4 months.
She's a rock star. She's a beast and a rock star, and we love her so much. Yeah.
So SUP retreats are possibly the best holiday one can have. What does that industry look like in the USA? Because there's a lot of that going on here in the UK and Europe. are they sort of more paddle surf orientated and take place down in Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, or are there more options further north in the US?
There's definitely a big audience for stand-up paddle retreats. I've hosted 24 in my time, and they are what I've found. What works are there's two different kinds. Like one is to take people down to an event in the Caribbean somewhere and set up a retreat for the week leading up to the event, right? So to have a race training retreat that culminates in a stand-up paddle race in some beautiful place. And then I've also experienced and hosted retreats where it's just strictly SUP surfing. I don't see that flatwater paddlers, many of them are sort of, if they don't want to learn how to surf, like they're not going to learn how to surf. They just don't want to put themselves into that environment. So mixing the two has never really been something I've seen as successful. But I also, there's SUP yoga retreats, like people go away and they just practice yoga on their boards for a week and do some, leisure paddling, and they're super popular, but are they here in the Northeast? Again, I haven't seen that, but I have something cooking that I'm hoping to do in Rhode Island next year. So we'll see how that all pans out.
So we've got to watch that space.
Heck yeah.
Excellent. And we mentioned downwinding a little bit earlier, because I'm just trying to sort of talk a little bit about SUP styles and show people that there's so many different things to do on a stand-up paddleboard. But are people still downwinding? Because it seems to be taken over or usurped by foiling. But are people still downwinding?
Absolutely. I mean, I think downwinding is, sort of where the adrenaline seekers go in stand-up paddling, and not everybody is going to jump to foiling. So downwinding is still popular here in the States. I mean, there's events and races and experiences all over the place. We do one every year from Montauk Point to Block Island, which is it's an 18-mile open ocean crossing, and it's just extraordinary, So again, it's an upper, that's more of an advanced level paddler, and we need to cultivate those people. We need to, in my experience, get people out on the water and challenge them in different conditions and show them that they have the skill, and teach them new skills so they feel safe, so they're able to leave shore and do something like a downwind experience. But I still see it, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's certainly a special experience. I love it myself.
Me too. Really, yeah, me too.
There's so much to do in stand-up paddle, and it's a really great time for stand-up paddle right now as well. So exciting times. Where is the best place for us to follow you online, Evelyn?
Well, certainly at standupjournal.com, right? It's just www.standupjournal.com. That is our blog website where we just try and keep, recent news updates. It gets updated several times a week, and athlete interviews, things like that. And then also certainly our social media, both Instagram and Facebook, is at Standup Journal, all one word. Can find us there. My personal Instagram is at NY Surf Girl, and I just try and show, the experience of living here on the tip of an island in New York, which is, as a water lover, which is amazing. And what else? And also on the website, you can find our subscription link to receive the print magazine. And again, that is shipped globally, and we're more than happy to do that for people.
Great. Well, thanks, Evelyn, and I really appreciate your time, and it was really, really fun chatting to you. So thanks so much for telling us all about Stand-Up Journal. It's an exciting place to be.
Nick, it's an honor to be on the SUP FM broadcast. I'm really excited to be here, and I just deep thanks to you and Simon for creating something that carries so much, information and education and energy for the sport. It's really nice to connect with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to SUP FM, the #1 podcast for stand-up paddlers wherever you are. If you like what you've heard, please leave us a review on iTunes. Until then, we'll see you on the water.